goes far and wide. We'll learn along as we break it all down. Marissa, Looney, Joseph, and Ryan, the best hosts in town.
Welcome to Podcast The Sequel, where we discuss the best, the worst, and the continued. My name's Marissa.
My name is Manira.
My name's Joseph.
My name's Ryan. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it right off the bat.
What's
What's the
do it.
pie? What
So
are we
we're-
doing? What's the origins of all of this? I'm ready for it, man. I'm here. I'm ready to go. Let's fucking go.
Joseph's energy is like way
You
up.
gotta
Oh,
bring
I'm
that
there,
energy.
dude.
So up.
I am so up. It's a pod.
We've
It's
been
been a
doing
while.
uppers all day.
Yo, man, I've been since for a long time. I'm ready to get this shit going.
Oh
so
God, he's
what,
like
what
he's
is
like
the
a he's like
origin
a
to this?
bottle. He's like a bottled up cannon, just ready to go.
Put a mic in front of my face
I
and
know.
say, "We're ready to record. We're ready to
No,
go."
Jeez, all right, we're ready. Oh my God, okay.
Aggressive.
Gotta be, bro. We gotta be.
Oh my God.
Shout out to Mark
Oh my God.
McGuire.
So basically, we're a podcast, and we're here to discuss all of our sequels to all of our movies, specifically sequels. So we might mention a little bit of the original movie, but we're specifically going into the continued story.
Pretty good.
Pretty good, but
Pretty
they're-
fucking good.
we're going through all of it, not just sequels. If you're just thinking of like we're doing number twos, no, franchises. We're talking about Star Wars. We're talking about Aliens. We're talking about Godfathers. We're talking about all the franchises you could think about. We're gonna go dive into it, talk about, discuss it. There's some great ones. There's some terrible ones,
Awful.
awful ones, ones that
Terrible.
should have been one-offs. I'm talking about Robert De Niro doing Taxi Driver 2. It's
not great.
And we'll
Okay.
get to that when we get to that. We'll cross that bridge when we cross it. But man, there's some great sequels. There's some awful sequels. But that's what we're here for. We're gonna talk about all of it.
So today, we're just basically going to introduce us, as we just did. We're going to talk about a little bit of what sequels mean to us, specifically defining them, and just
Yes.
kind of give a run through of our best and our worst. So if you're interested in that, just keep watching.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for more.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's get the
And-
let's get
I was
the,
like,
get right
and-
into this.
and where-
well let's define what is a sequel.
So I kind of want to open this up to you
Yes.
guys in the sense of before we define, like, I have a Webster's dictionary term
Hit us
of
with
what
that.
it means.
Hit us with the Webster one.
You want
first.
no? I so
You
so
want
I
us
want
to
to
define
so
it
I want to
first?
so I want to see what your guys'
Okay.
definition is first, because I feel like this is where towards the end of the episode we're gonna get into a lot of like
Awesome.
maybe mixed and like different types of opinions,
Yeah.
because there's certain things that I would consider a sequel,
Mm-hmm.
but not necessarily that others or you or other
People would
viewers,
consider a
anything
sequel,
like that,
yeah.
are gonna consider a
Absolutely.
sequel. So I'm just gonna state, like, just plain and clear, that like my version of a sequel is just a continued storyline of the
Yes.
original film. So it's not splitting off into a different like storyline
Realm.
or anything like that. It's just completely just going in the same direction. It's continuing to the story, the same characters. Maybe they changed like an actor or an actress based on certain circumstances, but it's still continuing the original story that was brought up.
Yeah.
So that's mine. So I don't know if
What about you?
Honestly, I agree with what you said. I think for me, the way I would define a sequel is a movie that continues the original story of the previous movie. Agree with the same thing where it's not kind of like a spin-off, whether it's the same actors or different actors. It's just a continuation of the original
Yeah.
storyline, the plot of the previous movie.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. I'm like, as long as the story that they want to tell is told, I'm fine with that. Obviously, some franchises, they kind of dip into very much different things. You can get like a prequel sequel that has both that's attached to it, or you can get spin-offs, and that's totally different from what we want to talk about. But sequels, continuation, storylines, as long as they get to like the point that they want to get to, I am 100% cool with sequels. But there's a lot of them that don't need to be needed. That's a different discussion for a different day, but that's where I am at with sequels.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think definitely something that would not be a sequel would be anything that's like related to James Bond, because it's not necessarily
too many of 'em.
continuing
Yeah.
a story. They're all one-offs.
Yes,
and that's
absolutely.
it. Just selling a single story in a window of time, and then it moves on
Yeah,
to
I
the next
consider
one.
them to be like standalone films
Yeah.
in like
Yeah.
the same realm.
Yeah,
but then
and
some
like-
but then some would argue because it's the same character.
Well, that's the
played
fun
by
of
a
it, isn't
That's
it?
different
where
actor.
True.
it
That's where
gets
we come
very
in, yeah.
blurry. That's where like the sequel thing gets very blurry. Like you could bring that up for Batman too. Like there's so many Batmans at this point.
Yeah.
And like you could jump from this point to that point, like you're jumping all over the map. So you don't really have a sequel. You just have a different actor playing the same character in the same world with different villains.
Yeah.
So like that's where like I'm cool with sequels that keep going with the story that wants to be told.
Yeah. So obviously lots of opinions. We're definitely going to get into obviously a little bit more. Like Ryan mentioned, James Bond. We'll get into a few more different movies that kind of do standalones or prequels even, or just spin-offs in general. But we're going to continue on with the definition, which I have just Webster's dictionary version, which is a literary, cinematic, or televised work continuing the course or story that was begun in a preceding one. So pretty much what we all said, just kind of continue on a storyline.
Yeah.
So there's also like the next installment is like a secondary definition, but I think that kind of speaks to
I think that's good.
what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Okay, cool. So now that we've kind of defined what we as a group believe is a sequel, we're basically going to go through and talk about our best and worst sequels in our own personal opinion. So I don't know if you guys want to start.
Do we start best or worst?
Do we want to each go in through best and then go through worst, or do you want me to say my best and worst and then Mooney say best?
Let's
and
go
worst
through
and then-
best and then go
Just
through
go through
worst.
Go
best
best.
first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I
Do-
feel like it's gonna change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go?
Go for it.
Yes,
for
go
it.
for
Take
it.
the lead.
Go
Hit
for
us
it.
the lead.
Okay,
Hit
cool.
us.
Okay, so for my best, I wrote down a few just in case like we all had different ones, but the one that I'm going to lead with is actually an animated film.
Ooh.
So I'm not saying this is
Really?
like the best sequel of all time. There's
But
so
this is
many.
your personal
Yeah, there's so
favorite.
many. And I thought about this very long and very hard about what I wanted the reasoning to be. And I'll say what it is and then I'll kind of get into it. But my personal pick for best sequel, from my own opinion, is Toy Story 2. And I have reasons because I know a lot of people are fan favorites of Toy Story 3, which I know Joseph's already nodding.
No, I am with you on Toy Story 2. I have a hot take for Toy Story 2, but I think I'm gonna save it for when we do talk about it.
Well, I'll give my reasons for why I picked Toy Story 2, and then if you want to give your little hot take,
Yeah.
we can. So Toy Story 2 for me, I mean, Toy Story kind of like blew Pixar up. It basically just kind of gave it like a space in cinematic film, and it just kind of blew up the box office essentially. So for me, it just continued the story perfectly right where it left off. I think it also introduced great characters that we still know and love today that continue on through the rest of the story. It kind of provided a little bit more backstory for one of the biggest characters, which is Woody. And I think it set up the entire franchise perfectly for Toy Story 3, which also was a great continuation of the story itself. So I think just like by plot, making us care about these characters, kind of giving them a little bit more backstory, like I said with Woody, it just kind of gave it like a nice little package and even set it up even more so for more sequels. Do I personally think that it needed more sequels after 3? No.
No, the answer is
Yeah,
The
answer
but
is
I
no.
but I think that it was like a good like in the middle like Toy Story, like great story, like great setup, something that was never thought of before. Obviously, like it made Pixar put its stamp in cinematic history.
Yeah.
And I think Toy Story 2 definitely was like great continuation. Great voicing in there for all characters combined. Set it up beautifully for Toy Story 3, which I think just like tied it up in a nice little neat package, and it just sent our way home. And then they were like, we want more money. And Toy Story 4 happened.
Now we're
And then
we
are we
want even
doing we're
more
5?
money.
Yeah, I was like, and then we're
'Cause
doing
now we
5.
want a 5th one, even though 4th one was even like more. So like, okay, we get it. They're going to
Dumpster
separate
fire.
ways.
Yeah.
Spoilers. By the way, guys, there's gonna be a bunch of spoilers in this pod. If you haven't watched these movies,
Oh,
and
yeah,
you don't
we should
want to
probably
be
state
spoiled
that.
about it, there'll be so many spoiler alerts. We will give you guys a heads up before we get into any movie you have not seen. If you have not
Yeah.
seen it, skip ahead. There's more stuff that you probably have seen, so we will talk about that in the future. But my hot take for Toy Story 2, and we'll talk about it eventually when we get to like the Pixar stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think Toy Story 2 is the best Pixar movie of all time.
interesting.
I'm there.
Ooh, the whole way.
Oh, whole way.
He
I
loves
love
Toy Story 2.
That
Wow.
is such a fucking great movie. When they're queening Woody.
Oh,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
such
One
a
of the
good like
greatest scenes,
it's so
dude.
good like ASMR, like just like the
Oh,
that
paint,
brush on that
the
boot.
paint on the
His
shoe.
eyeball
Oh my
brush.
gosh,
I'm like,
the
I'm
the
there.
stitching on his
Yeah.
like his arm and everything. I could watch that and like fall asleep to it every
It's
night.
such a great point, and even like the theory of what's Woody's cousin's name? I forget Jesse.
Oh yeah.
Jesse heard like the whole theory that
They're
like
cousins?
no, that like her owner was Andy's mom.
Oh yeah. Andy's mom,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
And like
Kind of
even
that
that
whole, like,
song
side
in
theory.
itself,
Well, yeah,
is
because-
sad as hell. It's like it's one of the saddest Pixar songs I've ever heard, other than Up or Ratatouille and stuff like that. We'll get into when we get into it later down the road. But like Toy Story 2 is a classic. It's
Yeah.
my favorite. It's my all-time favorite. Like just that the Woody queening scene is just.
I just
chef's
like
kiss.
all of it. I like like they kind of went outside. Like this is the first time where like it kind of just like took a different like story, almost story.
Even Buzz.
Well, no, even I feel like Toy Story, like you kind of got the like gist of like Woody and like
Yeah.
Andy and everything like that. But that primary story was mostly that Buzz was coming in and a new
Yeah.
toy was kind of like destroying these others, which like is huge for just merchandising on its own. Of just like there's always a new hot
Yeah.
toy.
And even
you
like even Toy Story's original went from like the cowboy movies.
Yeah.
They advanced
And now into science fiction.
to science
yeah.
fiction.
So like, and
so
that's
like the
obviously
cowboy
like,
got
yeah.
replaced by an astronaut. That like a laser beam because it was so much cooler than it was back in the days when they had like those Western movies.
Yeah.
So like it fit into the real world stuff that we were going through because like the Western movies got so like complacent at some point.
Yeah.
And like when Pixar did that, it's like oh my god, they're on point.
Well, and that's why like
And
I
even, like, the-
appreciated like Toy Story 2 because for that like we said like the first Toy Story kind of was more about like Buzz taking over
Yeah.
and like kind of fitting into like the rest of the toys where as like now Toy Story 2 kind of goes into like okay, where did Woody come from? What's his backstory? Because we got Buzz's essentially where like he's from this planet and like he's got this like bad guy coming after him.
And even in
everything
Toy
like that.
Story 2, they didn't even do Buzz wrong because they still gave Buzz the video game.
Yeah, they gave him
Because
a
you have
video
like
game.
Rex doing like the whole like button mashing and stuff. I'm like they killed every single point that you would want from an animated movie.
Yeah.
That's why Toy Story 2 is just a great choice.
Yeah, and all
Great
the
choice.
toys too. Like, I mean, as a kid, even like from a kid to a teen to an adult, like it's nice to see all those toys that like you grew up with a Mr. Potato Head and everything like that. So it's kind of fun to see those toys in action. I feel like that was the first time we got it cinematically speaking.
Open world.
Over, yeah, like
yeah, they're
kind of a,
like
you
in
know.
the city.
It just
Yeah.
had you
They're
like
doing
going
more.
into your room as a kid and being like opening the door and being like, "Are my toys coming
Yeah.
to life? Are they not coming to life?"
Yeah, I fucking hope not.
And then Chucky came out later, and you're just like,
And
"Oh,
you're just
here's
like,
a whole
"No."
other thing."
Just send
Stop
the
it.
Sid.
So anyway, so
Just-
that's
just
so
stop.
I was like, yeah, I'm gonna cap it. That's my best. That's what I'm gonna state it as. So I'll
Okay.
move. Oh yeah, I'll move to Moody.
So my favorite one. So this is the one where I actually had to think really hard on what I would consider my favorite sequel, and I actually picked Mamma Mia. Here we go again. I'm gonna get a lot of judgment for this.
No,
I already,
I already read it. I already read it on your
Yeah.
screen.
Spoiler
She
alert.
told me this last night. I'm like, whoa.
I already
Okay.
read it.
First of all, I waited almost 10 years for a sequel to Mamma Mia, and I love Mamma Mia. And honestly, I love the second one more than I love the first one. I think the music is a lot better in the second one than the first one. I
Same
think
music.
different songs. I think the plot was a lot better. I think they did justice to Meryl Streep's character where it wasn't solely focused on her. You got a little bit of a backstory for her character development where you saw her younger. She's a fresh college graduate. She kind of wanted to escape like her life and just, explore a Greek island. And honestly, I loved it so much that I decided to go on a vacation to Greece. And that's how I ended up at Greece too. I honestly fell in love with the movie. I wanted to go to Greece and I did it. And I think a lot of it was a good way to introduce new characters but also stay true to the origins of the Mamma Mia story. I mean, you find out at the end of the second movie that Sophie, Meryl Streep's character's daughter, is actually pregnant with a baby. We obviously know who
Spoiler.
the father is. We know who the father is, but they're at a crossroads in her life with her and Sophie and Sky are at a crossroads in her life. And then she relies on the stories of like how her mom came to find out she was a mother and like talking to her stepdad, I guess. Pierce Brosnan's character. Would you consider him stepdad, right?
I feel like it's like a
Yes.
surrogate dad because
Yeah.
I don't know. This is also
I know they
up
get
to-
married.
Well, I feel like it's up for debate because do they actually state in Mamma Mia, the play, the musical, whatever, who the actual dad is?
You never find
So
out who the dad is.
Yeah,
Very
so I
open-ended.
feel
So one of her dads.
I want to say like there was like some sort of like side story note, whatever, that states that it was. I'm trying to remember what the actor's name was, but it was one of the other guys. It wasn't Pierce Brosnan.
It
and
wasn't Pierce. It's
the blonde.
Stellan Skarsgård's
Yes,
a
I was
character.
gonna say. I feel like he was like somewhere was
They
stated
somewhat
that was it.
stated-
Anyway, it doesn't matter.
But you
Yeah,
also
it
find
doesn't
out in the
matter.
sequel that
My
it could be her
Arrakis.
because
My dude.
stop it. We're
Stop
not
it.
talking about Dune right
We're
now.
not
Talk
talking
about
about
Dune 2 at
Oh
some
my
point,
God,
guys.
okay, we're not gonna.
But
Ryan
I
still
think
hasn't even seen it.
I think it was a good way to
Yes.
kind of allude to it that it's always been alluded that it's Bill's daughter because
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
you
feel
kind
like
it kind
that's
of lines up in the timeline of the way things worked out, but also his aunt's name is Sophie too, so
Oh,
it kind of
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't know
Okay.
that.
So then that changes. Yeah.
Also,
but-
though, your movie has Cher, and that's already a spoiler.
Cher, Andy
That's
Garcia.
already- Andy
They
Garcia.
sang Fernando together. Come on, it was a good time.
I'm there.
That's all I have to say.
I just don't know if Pierce Brosnan has any point in singing.
He was probably the most brutal part of that film.
He was pretty rough.
Take it back.
He was
Take it back.
rough.
Take it
Okay,
back.
he didn't say
Okay,
that.
if he
Take it
shows
back.
up as
Okay.
James Bond again, then absolutely I'm in.
I feel
And
like he's a
even when he
little
came out
old.
as Dr. Fate and Black Adam, cool with that. But him and Mamma Mia, he was the weakest part of that film.
Take it back.
I
Didn't
can't
he
take
do
it
like
back.
another musical too?
Yeah, he
gonna
did the
say-
Will Ferrell one.
Yeah.
I feel like he sings
Double
a lot.
trouble.
He's done a few.
Why is he singing? Who gave him that
Who
pass?
gave- who gave
Let
him-
him follow
Like,
his
no,
passion.
as James Bond, he was great. Great James
great
Bond.
James
Yeah, like
Bond.
I would say top for me, top 5 James Bond. I wouldn't say my
For the
best
select
James
few
Bond,
that
but
have watched Black Adam, he's the best part of Black Adam.
Honestly,
100%.
I actually
I don't
didn't
He's
see
the
that.
best Dr. Fate that we've ever seen. in
Who
live
was it?
action
What was
form.
that? What was that one movie where it was like it was based on a book series? The
Percy
Olympic-
Jackson?
Percy
thank you.
Jackson?
yeah, I
Where
mean,
he's
I
in
would
the
take
wheelchair?
Pierce Brosnan
I mean,
as
the little
a
goat
dad
legs?
than a.
I know he
Do
was
we
like
like
Senator?
that? I was like,
centaur.
I love Percy Jackson, so I will be its one.
But
stan.
isn't it a good film?
No, but I like Greek mythology, so maybe why I
It
like
has-
that
Well,
movie.
okay.
Good
The
call,
okay,
too.
fine line is though that it's not a sequel, so we can't really talk about it.
Which one?
Percy Jackson, the first one that I'm.
Oh, yeah,
insinuating,
true.
so.
He's in
Well,
all
wasn't
of
there a
them.
second one though?
Manera's
There's like 3 of them.
Mamma Mia
Or did they
2 is
redo
the
it?
I have no
sequel.
idea.
I swear there was another
There's
one.
3 of them. There's 3 Percy Jackson movies.
And there's a
But I don't know.
series.
Are the
Yeah,
same
but-
people in
Yes, Logan Learman.
Is he's in all 3?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
We'll
But
cross
I
that bridge
think
when we
We'll
get
cross,
there.
yeah,
he's
we'll cross that.
in
We'll cross that
one
bridge
of
when
them.
we get there.
We'll
so
make that- we'll make that route when
Let's.
we make it.
Well, do you have any other points for Mamma Mia or?
Or-
It's a great movie. That's all I have to say.
Here I go.
That's
now.
our
it.
only
All
point.
right, Godfather Part 2, and I love Francis Ford Coppola. I love that movie. I love Al Pacino as Michael Corleone. I love Robert De Niro playing the prequel. It's the great story to unfold in that film, where it's like you see the rise of the actual Godfather, which is Michael's dad, but then Michael dealing with the betrayal. When spoiler again, and we'll have spoiler words every single time we talk about this. When Michael confronts Fredo on New Year's Day, when it hits
Oh, I love
midnight,
that.
when he kisses him, it's like, I know it was you. That still gives me chills.
It's
to
like
this day.
hauntingly beautiful.
It's haunting, but then the fact that he's like, I'm gonna keep you alive until mother dies, and like just the story it is, and then like when you go back to Robert De Niro's character, which is his father, where he's like having the time of his life. I know that he has to do what he has to do, but you're seeing the rise of the Godfather, and you're seeing the fall of the Godfather at the same time, because Michael ends up alone at the end of this film.
yeah.
Like his wife leaves him. That abortion scene too, where it's like, I have an abortion. I'm tired of this Sicilian thing.
Mm-hmm.
That moment fucking still hits me, where I'm like, holy shit, man, this guy is going through so much stuff. Which, by the way, he didn't even want to be a part of. Like, that's the best part of Michael Corleone. It's like he did not want any part of the family business. And even in this movie, he's trying to legitimize the family. He fails every step of the way. But then we see how great his father's going. Like, that movie is the perfect prequel, present, and future film that takes that fucking story to like another point where it's just insane. And Fredo is such like a character that you can never forget.
Yeah.
And like I feel like a lot of people relate to somebody in the family being a Fredo, and like you could talk about that for years. And it's such a great movie. I've listened to Francis Ford Coppola's like commentary over it. It's amazing. Like that guy had to deal with so much stuff with the studio and the actors. Like originally they didn't want Al Pacino to play Michael. They didn't want Robert De Niro to play the Godfather. Like there's so many things going into that film. But like the Godfather 2 is just storyline wise, acting wise, directing wise. I use this very, very, very rarely when I describe any movie. The perfect film. Godfather 2 is the perfect story
Yeah.
for any movie you want to see, because they check off everything you want to know about, man. And just seeing like the end shot is just Michael sitting on a bench knowing that he called the hit on his brother. He lost his kids because they don't want to be with them anymore, and his wife is divorcing him, and he's done. And all he has is his sister, and it's like a tragedy at that point. Like that's how good The Godfather 2 is. It's a great film. It's phenomenal. You think the first one is almost as perfect as it can be, and the second one it just takes it to a whole nother level. The Fredo scene is just, come on, it's tragic.
Yeah.
Like
I
your
like that
own
you
family
kind of brought up
betrays you. Like, holy
I like
cow.
that you brought up the statement of like the perfect film, because I
Yeah.
feel like in a lot of sense they talk about like the first Godfather and Godfather 2 together
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
being like one of the perfect films
Yeah.
of like over the last 100 years.
Mm.
And it's definitely something that I think like if you can watch, definitely watch. Like I went through a phase where I watched all 3 Godfathers, I watched Goodfellas, I watched
Yeah.
Casino all in like one summer when I was like in high school.
Mm.
And I mean, as much as I'm sure you would fight me on Goodfellas being great and Casino and all that stuff, I personally liked the Godfather movies altogether.
Yeah.
3 was a little rough, which we could
3
talk
is
about.
rough.
Which we could
think
talk about
everyone
later. We
agrees
can talk
on
about
that.
that later.
3, yeah, I think 3 is rough.
Yeah.
Just 2
We
is
can talk about, but 2, I think
2
you're like
is
spot on
there,
with it. Yeah,
yeah.
I was like, I think it's definitely on
especially
everybody's
the fact
list.
that like you're seeing his dad perfect his family or try to, and then you're seeing the fall of his family.
Yeah.
It's the rise and the fall all in one movie. It's like that's how insane that film is. Like the storytelling. Francis Ford Coppola. I know a lot of people are saying this next movie is gonna suck, which is we'll see it when we see it. We'll get to that point. But Francis, he made the 2 best movies I've ever seen in my life, which is Godfather, Godfather 2. Sequel-wise, that movie just takes it to a whole different level.
But I like it because it's also very parallel. Like if you're interested at all in like history and stuff like that, I think it takes its form very much so parallel with like a Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
Which to me is like a great storytelling. Like I know it's very basic, very old, but I think that we get a lot of inspiration for a lot of our movies, especially like tragedies, dramas, everything like that.
And that's true.
From Greek literature and Greek tragedy and past events, history in itself. So I think Godfather parallels, and the only reason I didn't choose Godfather 2 is because I absolutely knew that you were going to choose
gonna
it.
choose that.
So I was like, I have
That's
to choose.
why-
I have to choose
so,
something else.
Like I'm
but
maybe I'm morbid, and people could say I am. I like when it's not a good ending. I love the rise and the fall.
well, I think it's realistic.
that
It's just a
storytelling-wise,
realistic
yeah.
ending,
It's
right?
not
Like you
gonna
don't
be
want everything.
perfect.
You don't
Things
want it
aren't
to be
going to
perfect.
go the way you want it to go. There's no
Yeah.
storytelling ending. Like The Godfather was like one of the earliest ones to be like, yeah, you could have everything you want, but there's going to be a moment where you're going to hit that slide,
Yeah.
and it humbles you. And that movie freaking humbles you because like Michael didn't want that, and he got that, and now he's like, I have nothing.
Yeah.
And it's something you didn't even want, and like you're just in that moment being like, yeah, there's no storybook ending all the time. And there's a bunch of movies like that, of which like a lot of sequels too, and like there's a bunch of movies we'll talk about in the future as well on this podcast where like there is no happy ending,
Yeah.
but that adds value and that adds depth to the actual franchise itself. It makes you appreciate it when it comes to the point where you're talking about it. So that's why I love The Godfather 2. There's no happy ending at the end. It's like his dad had the rise and Michael had the fall.
And then it continued to
And it
Godfather
kept going,
3, which was like
which
even
was
more
even more
ending.
of a fall. And that's where I'll end it at. Like,
Yeah.
it's a whole
We'll
different
stop
thing.
there.
Yeah,
We'll
Francis
stop there.
went
Yeah, we'll stop there.
too fucking far. in
That's
that one.
another episode.
Yeah, that's another
For
episode.
sure.
Yeah.
Can I add one thing to your Godfather? So, I have watched the first 3 Godfather movies
I'm sorry.
for the first time. Literally, like,
I'm sorry.
not even a year ago, I watched all 3 of them for the first time.
She's a newbie.
I am a
Yeah.
newbie. It took me almost 30 years to watch them, and I finally made it. I did not really care for the first one. But
Really?
But the second one made me appreciate
The
the
first
first one
one.
a lot
Yeah, okay.
more.
I was like waiting for her to be like, but I loved Sophia in the third one. And then I just
But I feel like the second one made you appreciate.
The second
not
one did-
appreciate, but understand Michael's
It made me
situation.
understand the first one a lot more. It made me understand, not necessarily like humanize Michael, but made me just kind of more just understand
Mhm.
why it is like a classic film, why everyone loves The Godfather. I didn't care for the first one, honestly, probably because we watched it really late at night and I was half asleep. But it
Oh,
did
that
make
I watch
me.
it every Thanksgiving. It's
Yes,
just
you do watch
like
it
a
every
religion to me
Thanksgiving,
at this
but
point.
it did make me appreciate it a lot more. I have nothing but terrible things to say for the third one, but that's a different story.
Third one's
but-
a different story.
It did really make
We'll
me
cross that
appreciate The
bridge.
Godfather
yeah, we'll get there. We'll get
a lot
there.
more. But I also have another thing to say. I'm actually very curious what your favorite sequel movie
Yeah, I
is.
am too. Yeah.
That was the one thing
I
that
am
Joseph and I
very
were
I
talking
feel
about
like
last
I
night.
know what it is. based on-
Piggybacking off of what you said of
Yeah.
certain movies don't have happy endings.
Mhm.
It's just life. Sometimes it's the way that it is.
Yeah, it doesn't have it.
It has world building.
Mm.
It has fantasy,
Mm.
sci-fi.
I already know what this is. I already know where this is going.
It's Empire Strikes Back. All right. They elaborate on the Jedi. It has everything. It has no Tatooine, which is good. You get you get Dagobah.
Oh, he
You,
hates
you get
Tatooine.
Hoth.
I thought they loved
No
Tatooine.
sand.
No,
Sick of
Ryan
sand.
You get
hates
Cloud
Tatooine.
City.
Because that's dude, you get Lando, the coolest man in the galaxy. Everything. And then we'll get into that when we get into the episode. I won't say what the spoiler is, but that twist ending that it has in there, super great.
Nobody saw that coming.
No, and it was one of the highest grossing movies of all time
Yeah.
Yeah.
for a sequel, especially.
I don't know if it currently sits there.
I
feel like
doubt
we'd
it.
have to
But
fact
no,
check.
yeah, I'm
we
sure it's
definitely
like
have to fact
Avatar or
check.
some bullshit.
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure it's like an Avatar, Dune. Like
As
some
as
bull-
much as I love New Hope, Empire established
man.
Star Wars.
That was my
That's
favorite
what
one
it
to put
was.
on when I was growing up, and I would watch that one more consistently than Episode 4.
I think that's
Oh,
the one that like everybody talks about too when they're initially like introduced to Star. When I say introduced to Star Wars, and we're gonna get into this in just a little bit, but like they talk about Star Wars, it's usually 4, 5, 6, and then I think between those three, I feel like Empire is the most like where people are just like, oh yeah, I love Empire Strikes Back. So I think that's just like I mean it did kind of what a lot of movies can't do, which is intrigue both like adults and kids. I mean, I think it was perfect for merchandising. I think it was great storytelling.
Merchandising.
Yeah,
Because
great storytelling.
Empire was so strong for the fact that's like like you said, there's no happy ending.
Yeah,
But you could still add things into that franchise that people are gonna be like, that's freaking cool. You know what I mean? Like, oh, like the AT-ATs, like
Oh,
the
yeah.
AT, like that's so sick. Like every
It's a
time we
story
see it,
about science,
and it's like they're in the movie like the first like 20 minutes of the film, and you're like, okay, cool, but that was still awesome. And then like if you want an appreciation for Vader, that's the movie.
yeah.
That's the one. Like if you care about the Skywalker saga, and we'll get to it at some point because the Star Wars franchise is loopholes and here and there. And we'll get to the.
I mean,
that.
no, yeah, we're gonna get. I
Yeah,
mean,
we'll
we're gonna
get
talk.
to
We're gonna
that.
talk about it a little bit
We'll
tonight.
get to
but
that. But like that movie establishes the Skywalker saga, where it's the yin yang of Vader and Luke, and that is that movie puts us where we get to, which then again, like I'm saying, we're gonna get to that point, Last Jedi, and we'll get there. But that is the movie for the Skywalker saga. That is the one. That is the one for Luke. That is the one for even Leia. Like that's the first time we see Leia just fucking like have that connection with Luke, and if you're watching it for the first time, you're like, why?
is that the one where they kiss?
Technically, they kiss in Episode 4 in the
Yeah.
beginning, but it's
Oh,
more of like a
okay.
she's trying
It's
to
like a
make
peck.
Han jealous,
Yeah.
and he's like,
Yeah.
I just made out with my sister.
That was the first.
Well, no, because I
one.
know like,
But they don't know
wanna
their
get into it
siblings.
too much.
Not at
They
that
don't
point.
know
Like, I
that.
don't wanna
They
get-
don't know that till when they know that. But
just a
that the
feeling.
fifth one is where we're like, the fact that Leia's in the Millennium Falcon, and that's the first time we're like, she knows where he's at, and she goes back to get him, and like just that moment, you're just like,
Oh, yeah,
oh
where- yeah,
my
where he's-
god,
yeah.
like, and then the movie ends, and for some reason Lando's wearing Han's clothes, whatever. Okay,
Because he
bye.
wanted to be just
well,
like
it's
Han.
canon. He mentioned, and by he I mean Lando Calrissian
Yeah.
himself, said it was because they were lovers, and I believe in that.
sucks,
I
man.
believe that,
That
100%.
movie, I feel like that's the premier Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I think
of
it's
all
great.
of them. That's the one. If you want to talk about any Star Wars movie, that's the one that establishes so many Easter eggs and just so many
Yeah, it just
temples.
has
where you're
world building. It elaborates on the story.
Mm.
It
It was
doesn't
just
just.
missing one thing.
And what was that?
It was missing Jar Jar.
Stop it.
Like, I mean, he might have been there. Might have been.
I mean,
He was somewhere.
technically, he was the one who started the Star Wars.
Star Wars.
He
He
did.
started
He
Star-
started.
He started the Star Wars.
Do we want to do the worst?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like this might take more time. Is the worst.
Do we want to go?
But-
Before-
back
back around?
Yeah. Do you want to go back? Do you want to go start?
Yeah,
you
I'll
We'll
wanna
start with
start.
our
Yeah, yeah.
Loop
before
it?
we
Yeah, we'll loop
before
it.
we move on to the worst. I would just like to say that I had a dream of Jar Jar Binks last night. Why? I have no idea why he was in my dreams last night, but the fact that you just
I know
mentioned
why,
him,
because I have a
So
shirt
terrifying.
with the one you saw with the yellow eyes, and I pulled it out. Like,
you mean
I'm
the
gonna
one
wear
I
this.
got for you?
I pulled it out. I'm like, I'm gonna
Yeah,
wear this
yellow
tomorrow, and you're
eyes.
like, no.
You's a big doo-doo.
He's a big doodle head.
The shirt. Why didn't you? Oh, you should wear it for when we do when we talk about.
We'll-
Star
We'll all
Wars.
do
we'll
it.
never
we'll
know,
wear it
because
together.
We'll Star Wars.
I have fun facts of who's supposed to win Jar Jar.
There was like
Yes,
a
I do know one.
high-profile person.
Oh, absolutely.
He was the king of
High
something.
profile.
Oh,
Don't Google it.
I will not.
Just wait to be
I'm just
surprised.
gonna wait. I'm
You
gonna
really
wait.
don't
I'm gonna
know?
wait till we.
Oh,
I'm gonna
I
wait till we
can't
talk
wait.
about it.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm
it's
gonna
a
wait till we talk about it.
high-profile
Okay.
person.
All right, let's go to
Um,
Ryan's
let's
worst
talk
for
movie.
the-
about-
for
let's
the
talk about-
worst
yeah,
of all
let-
time.
We'll loop back around. Ryan, you'll start with your
Yeah, of
worst.
course. The worst sequel of all time is going to a little movie called Son of the Mask. And the reasoning for that is it's a movie that's so bad because the original actor was so good at what he did that they did not need to use as much CGI because his mannerisms were already cartoonish enough as it is. Not to mention just god-awful special effects, zany, terrible humor, poop jokes, pee jokes, all that stuff. Awful. And
I want to see Jamie Kennedy in something that's just like above everything, right? Like something that just brings him back to a level of like
he needs that.
Oscar worthy performance. Like not to say that Brendan Fraser was not a great actor, but what I'm saying is that he came back and just blew everybody away, right? So I want that for people like Jamie Kennedy because
Pauly Shore.
I would love that for Pauly Shore
It was Pauly Shore's
as
dad.
well.
Excellent movie. if you haven't seen that.
But no, but
wanna
I'm
check
like,
out.
but I'm saying like the only thing that I could really truly say that I loved Jamie Kennedy in was the Scream movies. And like not to like we've met Jamie Kennedy. Like he seemed like a nice person, but like I don't know him. I
Yeah,
just said we
that's
met
about
like
it,
we met him
yeah.
like at con. Like we don't personally know him. So like I'm gonna say that he seems like a genuine human being, but I really would
career-wise.
like I would like something a little
needs
more
it.
serious or at
Yeah.
least something that's just like
Yeah,
I mean
and
not.
he still has a chance to do that too. Like he's
Oh,
not that
absolutely.
old.
I'm
Like,
just saying, like, now, like, if you're looking for your shot, now's your chance, kind of thing.
I would not be shocked if he's in the next Scream,
Ooh.
especially now.
But he got killed off in 2.
Maybe.
Spoiler.
I mean, it's with Scream though.
I mean, yes,
Everyone
but I
comes
mean,
back
It was
somehow.
also in a
there's
van,
so
and we
much
didn't
blood.
really
Yeah,
see
that's true.
that
They did
much.
kill him off screen,
Yeah.
and but then I just feel weird about it because they. We're
But
going into too
it's-
much.
it's
Going into too much.
Scream.
Going into yeah. We're
It's
going into too
Scream.
much about
So
it.
Son of
but-
the Mask.
But anyway, yeah, I was like, so Son of the Mask. So anyway, well, yeah,
It's
if
dog
oh yeah, if you didn't
It's
know,
terrible.
yeah.
Don't watch it.
If you
but
didn't
you do.
know, Jamie Kennedy is the star of Son of the Mask.
Yeah,
Sorry,
the
that's
star.
where I'm getting at.
Which
with
they
that
offered 10 million to Jim Carrey to reprise the role, and he said no, because he did Ace Ventura, the second movie, and he was like, "There's no challenge in this."
Which
And
is
then went on
funny
to do
because
Dumb and Dumber 2
one would
and-
argue
And all his other
that the
movies.
second
He
Ace
did terrible
Ventura
movies.
was
He did worse
better
movies.
than the first.
I love the second one more than the first.
I've never seen
Yeah.
any of the Ace Ventura movies.
Well, don't worry. We're gonna.
You
I
have,
mean, we're
you've-
gonna-
you've
yeah,
seen
we're
I've
the
seen
first
we're
one.
gonna
no,
do
I've
it.
seen
We're
the
gonna
Pet
do it.
Detective one. Sorry, I take it back.
Okay,
I
that's
saw
what
the
you
Pet
said.
Detective
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
So you've seen the first one with Courtney Cox and Dan
that the first
Marino.
one?
Yeah, that's the first one.
Yeah,
With
when he's
the
looking
dolphin.
for the dolphin.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
dolphin.
that's the Dolphins one.
Okay, I take it back.
Literally,
I've seen Ace
why
Ventura,
you're
I
a
don't
Dolphins
remember it.
fan?
I'm a
Yeah,
Dolphins fan.
you're a Dolphins fan.
I'm a
so
Dolphins fan
confused.
because
Dan
Dolphins are
Marino's
my
in the
favorite
film.
movie.
But
Or my
Son of
favorite
the-
animal.
It's
Son
my
of the
favorite
Mask
movie.
is-
It's my
that
favorite
movie-
animal.
I watched that movie in theaters opening weekend with my mom, and it was just a
Oh,
Son
it's
of the Mask?
hilarious. It's
Those
a
are
great movie.
those.
Anyway, we're talking about best movie. We're talking about best movies.
I would like to throw on one thing because we're talking about Jim Carrey. Is that when I was growing up? No, I'm just kidding. I already told that story.
Oh no, this is a great. No, that's a great story. I think for another time. But
That'll be another time for
great
that
story.
episode.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great
yeah.
story.
Continuing
So
on.
We're doing worse, right?
We'll do
This
yeah,
is
we'll do
my
worse.
turn. All right, I'm gonna do The Exorcist too. Budget cuts,
Ooh.
storyline cuts. Like the first Exorcist is also boring. I have my fears about it, but that's because there's an exorcism scene that carries the movie. You know, the exorcism scene in the first one carries that film.
Yeah.
Her head turning, or her like signing in the stomach, the statue of Satan coming up. The second one has none of it. It's just a boring, complacent movie that makes Linda Blair just so bad of an actress, which she didn't deserve after what she did in the first one. And the second one just doesn't go anywhere. It just like the third one of The Exorcist is so much better than the second one. Because the second one goes nowhere. She's looking at moths and she's looking at like different things, and just the commentary in that film, the language in that film, the acting in that film, the directing in that film, the script of that film, which originally, if you could look that up, by the way, the original concept for The Exorcist 2 would have been probably better than the first one. But we won't get into it till we get into it. It would have been better, but the actual second movie, because of budget cuts, it's terrible. Like, I don't give two rats ass of that movie.
Do you
Like-
know by chance offhand what the budget was? Was it greater than? Because I mean, most of the time when you're getting a sequel,
It
you're
was
getting
worse
more
than
money.
the first one.
Really?
Yes, it was.
So
really
that's
bad.
surprising to me.
Because
Yeah.
the second one originally was like the concept of the second one was so much elevated from the first one.
Mhm.
They were to go over the top, which would have been cool. And they were just like, when they got into it, because they lost like 2 directors before,
Mhm.
and there was like budget cuts. We got to cut this out. We got to cut that out. So that's what
Yeah.
we got, and that's why they tried so hard with the third one, with like the prison scene and like we all know that iconic scene with the nun.
Yeah.
Like
The
that.
third one, yeah.
That's why they put more budget in the third one, because the second one they just kept ruining the budget. Because the second one originally was supposed to be really good, and they just kept messing it up, and there was no payoff. Like the first one's boring.
Yeah.
First one's a very boring story.
Well, it's boring up until I want to say like halfway through, but I understand that they're trying to set you up
Yeah.
for like where it came from and
Yes.
how it got
and
there
then you
and
get
all
to
this
the
stuff.
exorcism scene where it's like, all right, creepy.
Yeah.
There's stuff going on. The second one does not have that.
I
Second one's just like, here you go. Like,
there's a very
serve it on your
specific
fucking
point
plate
in the
and just
in the
deal with
second
it.
one that I love, and it's Linda Blair talking to like I think it was like the little girl or whatever, and she's just kind of like, oh, like I had a demon in me once, and she
Yeah.
and the little girl's like, what did you just say? And she's
Yeah.
like, oh no, like he's not in there anymore, and it's just so like
It's so off.
like oh yeah, like I had a pimple once and it just went away, like
So
like there's an
originally,
exorcism.
they were supposed to bounce off of that scene.
Yeah,
Because she was supposed to be a demon, the little girl.
interesting.
Because that was how she was introducing herself back to that character.
Yeah.
And she was supposed to possess Linda Blair, and we're supposed to get that again, but over the top.
Oh.
And then they're just like, oh, budget cuts, different director. And that's where they ruined it.
Mm.
Honorary mention, though, Last Jedi. We'll get to that someday.
I'll just throw that in there really
So
quick.
throw Last Jedi. We'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get down that road.
Let's hear
So
Mary's.
for The Exorcist 2, they had a $14 million budget.
Which wasn't.
Oh, I'm so excited that we're talking about budgets because
Yeah.
mine has to deal with budget, but we'll get there.
Really?
We'll get
Okay.
Well, mine like pivots off budget, but I'll let you do yours first, which
Did
I
you
already
already
saw it. I already saw it.
Cheater. So my worst movie, I actually picked Jurassic Park 3.
Yes.
I
Alan.
love,
Oh my god.
love.
Like, you don't like the
Oh.
dinosaur on the plane?
No.
No.
Alan.
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 And I love the Jurassic Park films. I love 1 and 2. I have only seen the first and the second revival continuation
Jurassic
series.
World.
Oh, with Chris
Jurassic-
Pratt and
Chris
everybody?
Pratt. I've only seen the first. I've not seen the third one. But
Yeah.
I love the Jurassic Park series. I love. It's one of my favorite rides in the entire world. I love the Jurassic Park ride.
Is it really?
I actually really do love the Jurassic Park ride.
How come we didn't go on it when we were at Universal?
Because we go
Other reasons. I will not get to right now.
I mean,
my
that
fault.
weight,
Does it
first
get
of all.
wet?
but
The
I mean,
weight,
Because I
first
get
of all.
wet in my
I didn't.
clothes.
I didn't realize you were that big of a
I
fan.
love Jurassic Park. I love the ride. When I went to the Universal Studios in Singapore, side story, I was very disappointed in that ride because
Subtle
it
flex.
Subtle flex.
was
Sorry.
just have it. It was not the same. I was hoping for a drop, and it was just an elevator that drops you down. It's not the same. But you know what? Different story.
It's Tower
but
of Terror.
I loved. No, it was very slow too.
Okay.
Loved Jurassic Park, and I think for the third one, to me, it honestly felt like it was just like an original movie for the Sci-Fi Channel. It didn't really feel like it was a Jurassic Park movie. I feel like the plot was unnecessary. I felt like it was just a filler movie. I honestly feel like it destroyed the franchise, which is probably why it took 14 years to get another Jurassic Park movie. And one thing that I found out while I was researching the movie and everything is that they actually started filming Jurassic Park 3 before they even had a script written for
Oh,
the
yeah.
movie.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
They didn't have a plot, probably why it sucked. But you know what? It's a different story. But I honestly, like, I just love the movie, and I think it just destroyed the entire franchise for me. That I have not seen Jurassic Park 3 in probably like 20 years. Whenever it came out, I don't even know how many years it's been, but I have not watched it in a hot minute.
Maybe
but
like 15, 20 years. Yeah, maybe like 15.
I
Alan.
thought it came out in like 2003.
I just that's one scene is worth it to me.
Yeah, that's true.
Alan.
Yeah.
Alan.
It just seemed like unnecessary. Like even the plot of the movie, like a kid disappears, so we're gonna
You don't like
kidnap
the fact
Alan.
that he found his phone with the ringtone?
No.
Mm-hmm. And that ringtone too.
Oh yeah, that's
that
right.
Nokia ass ringtone.
Oh my god.
I feel like they relied too hard on CGI and
They
like
did.
it didn't have that oomph that like Jurassic
didn't.
Park and Lost
Yeah.
World had.
And I think that's a biggest
Vince
thing with
Vaughn
Jurassic
was
Park.
better.
Yeah, I
He's
was
the
gonna say,
best
like,
part
Who
of
was it? I kept
Lost
thinking
World.
about it. I was like,
and he
who is
speaks
it?
like he acts like he speaks Spanish and that shit. You don't know fucking Spanish, Vince Vaughn.
Are you
fuck
serious?
outta
I was like,
here.
what do you not know that Vaughn is one of the most common Hispanic names?
Yeah,
That man is Middle Eastern as hell. If you guys did not know that.
is he really?
Yeah, he's
I
Lebanese.
Oh, Senor
shit.
Vaughn?
I did not know that.
He's
Vince
Lebanese.
Vaughn is a national treasure.
He is.
He is.
He is. But that's hilarious. Him being like he's the Spanish interpreter. That shit cracks me up every time. Every
Couldn't
time I
have
watch that
anybody
movie.
else.
Yeah.
He's
nobody
Mediterranean.
else.
He's like,
No,
oh, he said
nobody
it's the
else
island
knows.
of death, and he's like, what the hell?
Wow.
That shit cracks me up.
Every time I think about Vince Vaughn, I think of old school.
Oh man.
It's like, oh, you could say shit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, don't celebrate it, Frank.
I go wedding crashers, swingers.
Swingers are great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like
I think-
couples retreat.
I think the breakup plan with Jennifer Aniston.
Oh, I hate that.
The more
movie.
you watch it,
Oh,
the funnier it
I
gets.
hate that movie. I don't
Yeah,
even
what's the
like them
biggest
together.
movie?
I don't like them together
separately.
either.
With,
Yeah, I like them
um,
separately.
I
with
don't
Jon
like them
Favreau.
together as a couple either.
Swingers.
Oh,
Swingers,
just-
yeah, that
ugh.
one was my go-to when they're in that diner
Oh yeah.
and he's getting up.
And he's like,
Yeah,
like,
Vince
just being that awkward, just sitting in the Winnebago, like, oh, what the fuck are we doing here, man? I'm not trying to hook up with this random ass.
John Favreau, what a guy.
Oh, I love John Favreau.
Oh, I do too.
I
He's also a
love
national
Jon
treasure.
Favreau.
He is
also
a national treasure.
He could get
More
it.
than Vince Vaughn.
Okay,
Damn.
well, Vince Vaughn made Iron Man.
Yeah.
Okay, god damn.
Vince Vaughn made Iron Man.
Vince Vaughn
Yeah.
made
I
Iron
thought,
Man.
John Favreau.
Jon
Okay,
Favreau
I was
made
like,
Iron
how
Man.
dare you?
That would've been a completely different
and
movie.
Mandalorian.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
John
Favreau.
So once
Vince
again,
Vaughn.
okay. So
Jon
yeah,
Favreau.
once again, I reiterate, John Favreau could get it. Anyway.
Yeah, he's the greatest chef. Did you not know that?
He actually.
He did
he's a good chef.
chef.
This chef.
He did chef.
All right.
He's the chef.
Do you want to close this episode off?
Wait,
Well,
Marissa has to do
hers,
her
yeah.
worst movie.
Her worst,
Which
and then
I'm
yeah, we'll
also
close this
excited
out.
to hear this
Oh my
because
God.
I tried to guess it and I was wrong.
Oh, you already read it? Did you already read it? on
No,
my
I did
little
not.
notepad? Okay.
I didn't read it, unlike you.
I just looked over,
Mhm,
glanced over.
mhm.
So mine, I based off so many different reasons. So for mine, it's a offender of ruining what the first one put down, like by far. The first one I think put like a staple in its genre, based on like the budget that it had. It just completely killed box office records. My dad, who was like in Vietnam, listed it as like one of the scariest movies he'd ever seen. To this
Smurfs
point,
too.
probably not. I mean, Smurfs is terrifying. But to me, my worst sequel, just based off all of those things and more, acting and everything like that, is Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2.
Dog shit.
It is just
Terrible.
It's not good. So I don't even know where to begin. I guess I started off by saying that it's just completely goes AWOL from the original. The original Blair Witch was just, cinematic art. It kind of blasted, the whole, like, kind of same thing with
The
my
found footage.
It kind of goes with my best pick of, like, Toy Story kind of launched Pixar into like the cinematic world.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I feel like Blair Witch did the same thing, but with shaky, kind of like that shaky
Found
cam,
footage.
like found footage
Yeah.
kind of thing. Whereas like Blair Witch 2 kind of doesn't have that
No.
necessarily. It's kind of just like this weird, like they do a portion where they kind of do reverse, like cam and everything like that, and there's like this weird like abortion scene, and then to top it all off, it's called Book of Shadows, and there's no Book of Shadows, like in the entire movie. And like also with budgetary things, like it still did double its budget. I think the budget was like 15 mil and it ended up making like 40 mil, 47 mil. But like the original Blair Witch did it in like with like $750,000 and made like 250 million.
And they're still looking
Like
for more
it's
money.
insane. Yeah, like I'm sure they're gonna do. Yeah, they still did like other ones and stuff like that, but this movie alone, like I randomly put it on because like I remember my dad as like a kid saying that Blair Witch was terrifying and everything like that. It was the scariest movie he'd ever seen. So I put on the second one thinking that it would be the same, and it was not. It confused me so much, and I put it as the worst just because it doesn't really link anything to the first one. Like, it's just a terrible movie, terrible acting. There's not really a clear cut story. There's no Book of Shadows, so even Figgy agrees.
Yeah. I also feel like that was a movie that was kind of the product of its time, where like it was trying so hard to be like early 2000s.
Yeah.
And I love early 2000s. Like, I know
Well,
that
yeah.
early 2000s horror is like by most standard terrible, but there's like a soft spot in my heart for early 2000s where like I eat that up. Like,
Yeah.
I would love to see anything.
Well, there's a good way of
2000s
doing it in a bad way, and
Yeah,
that
and
was
Blair
not the
Witch
way.
was more of like they did the found footage one first.
Well, and I'm
better
down
than
for like a
anybody.
so good it's bad. Like, to me, like we talked about this earlier with like Jaws 3, Jaws the Revenge, where like to me like the CGI is terrible in Jaws 3. Like the storyline alone like makes you never want to go to SeaWorld again other than the
Yeah.
whole animals thing. But
Like-
it's just like a soft spot. Like
Yeah.
Dennis Quaid is in it. Love Dennis Quaid.
But like early
ugh.
2000s, like I know what you still did last summer.
Yeah.
That's one of them.
They're
Where it's
making
like
a
you
TV
doubled.
series. Oh no, they already did the
They
TV
already
series.
did it,
Yeah,
it
they already
bombed.
did it. They already
Like
did
you
it.
doubled down on something that didn't need to be doubled down. It was like Blair Witch. Like there's a one. Speaking of Blair Witch, they came out with the movie that they swore was like the scariest movie that they've ever
Is
seen.
that the one
The
we watched in
marketing, no,
theater?
the marketing was
This
great.
is way before the second one. This is
Yeah.
like years after.
Mm.
They promoted it at Comic-Con. Me and you went because we got screening passes for it.
We
It
walked out
ended
of
up
the
being the
theaters.
third part of Blair Witch, and it was just as bad. It was just as terrible. They show you the witch. It's not great,
Yeah.
and it goes all the way back to the first one. It goes back. The ending scene is literally where she's walking into the room where the guy is standing in the corner, and it goes back to that, and it ends right there. There's no conclusion. It ends there.
Yeah.
And
And
I
I'm
will
looking
say
at her
this.
and
They,
being
like,
like,
they did that shit again.
It was Blair Witch. I'm like, God
Yeah.
damn it. I'm literally sitting there with
So that-
screen
yeah.
passes and the fucking packed ass theater be like, it's Blair Witch. I'm like, I can't believe it. They screwed me again. The second one, the third one, I'm like, how many times can Blair Witch screw me? This is after a week that we walked out of Rings, by the way, which is another thing we're gonna shit talk too. Another bad sequel.
Oh, just you wait.
Rings is another one. But when we went to see that Blair Witch, because it wasn't called Blair Witch, it was
was
something
not
like
called Blair
something in the
Witch.
woods.
It was
Yeah, I
something
feel
in the
like
woods.
Yeah,
I
and
will
they
say
promoted it.
Oh, I remember. Whenever they rebooted.
They
kinda
promoted it
rebooted.
so
Kinda.
well,
Yeah,
and they're
it
like
was
the
like a
scariest
reboot.
movie you've ever
It
seen.
was a
blah, blah,
reboot,
blah.
but
Yeah.
then
And
it
then
ended up
we
being
No,
walked into
every-
the screening,
every
and
movie
I'm
is
looking
the
at her being
scariest
like,
thing
how
I've ever
funny
seen.
would it be if it'd be Blair Witch?
And then it fucking
And I'm
happened.
like, it's Blair Witch. I'm like, it's Blair Witch. I'm like,
I was
screaming.
son of a bitch.
I'm like standing up, being like, it's Blair. Where's the guy like in front of me? He's like, oh no.
I was so mad at him because I actually hate the Blair Witch movies.
Yeah, that first one.
Why?
To-
Is it because it's like the camera? The
Because she
shaky
didn't.
cam
I don't
kinda
think
thing?
she hates the found
I
footage
hate
stuff.
found.
Okay, yeah.
Any,
She doesn't
any
like
movie watching,
Cloverfield.
watching found footage films.
I
didn't
like
It gives me a
I love
headache.
Cloverfield.
I didn't
I know
like
you
it.
like
Love
Cloverfield,
Cloverfield.
but that one, and then is it The Gallows?
The Gallows sucked.
Anything that has like found
Oh, I
footage
didn't like The
films or like the
Gallows.
The
visit.
Gallows is terrible.
What was the one where like the two kids visit like their grandma or their
That's
grandparents?
M Night
Yeah,
Shyamalan.
I wanna say
Sorry.
that's
Yeah.
like the
Anything that
grandparents
has like
or some
found
shit.
footage, I don't like it because it hurts my eyes. To
Yeah, I
watch
could.
it. I
Especially
get a
if you're in a
headache.
big theater.
I
it'll
get a
make me
headache
sick.
watching it.
If I could watch it on like a small screen, it's
Even
Gallows
in
is
a small screen,
terrible.
I can't do it.
Cloverfield, I have to tell you, that's the one off that I really enjoyed.
I hate all found
I could
footage
talk
films.
shit about the second Cloverfield. That had nothing to do with the actual Cloverfield.
Knock it off.
That's different.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
That's just
Force of
on.
Habit.
Prequels,
Not this one.
prequels, franchise spin-offs. There's Star Wars. There's Aliens. There's Predators. Where do we end up in that realm of movies?
I think it just kind of depends on like, you know, I think we briefly touched upon like Star Wars. Like, I know I mentioned earlier, like when most people are introduced to Star Wars, it's like 4 through 6. But then a lot of people, I think from like our, I guess I'll say our generation, which is like, you know,
Millennials.
millennials, Gen Z, that kind of era, like know kind of what we now know is 1, 2, and 3. So like Phantom Menace, those kind of like state.
Yeah.
So, you know, do you kind of start it at like, is 1 really 2, or is 4 and
Is
5
4
and 6? Like
the
how, you
original,
know, like
yeah.
how are we gonna go based off that? You know, like are we gonna talk about 4? Or is that technically the original? Or are we gonna not talk about Phantom Menace? Because I would love to talk Phantom Menace if we could, but at the same time it's technically a prequel, so like are we solidifying that in
Yeah.
our grouping.
Date of release or chronological
Yeah,
order.
so like I think that's kind of more, and like if you have an opinion as well, like let us know. But I would think that it's the start of the story, which like release wise would be 4. But if you're starting the story from the very beginning and doing it based on origins,
You go 1,
it
2,
would
3,
be
4,
1.
5, 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like we wouldn't talk Phantom Menace. We would talk 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And
right?
I feel like Star Wars is the one where it's like you could do 4, 5, and be like, I wonder what happened before then. And then you get 1, 2, and you're like, never mind.
Well, then, yeah, well, no, and then that brings up the
It's
other.
political. You're like,
Well, and it brings, up,
no.
it brings up the other consideration too of like you get a story, right? Of like
Yeah.
Toy Story, like is there a sequel or like a prequel
Yeah.
per se, or like an origin story? Because like I mean, we could
I
get
mean,
a,
you have Buzz.
you know, I mean, like you
And-
have,
but you have
yeah,
Woody
yeah,
too.
so,
Woody
like,
clearly had a TV
they-
show.
Yeah, so like just 2, like 2 had,
And
yeah.
Jessie clearly had a different owner. She was literally a toy that
so
was
do we
bought.
talk? Yeah. So does Jessie get her own story now? And if Jessie gets her own story, is that a like it would more so be a spin-off? But like we
You
get
can
we get into
go-
all these. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I think most recently too, we can talk about like Pearl X. Like those movies, like
Yes.
where technically
Maxine.
Pearl is more of an
A
origin
prequel,
story.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a prequel to
Than X.
X. Whereas like
But it goes into Maxine.
yeah,
which
kind of
is-
Maxine is
And then, like,
the-
if you want to get real technical, like Indiana Jones, you have like the young Indiana Jones series, and then
Yeah.
you go into fucking like the
Yeah.
next few.
Well,
of
yeah,
them.
and then also like,
Yeah.
are we going to be discussing series on that matter? Because I know that they've released a lot of like Mandalorian and everything like
Yeah.
that kind of like are spin-offs.
Because like
of the
Mandalorian,
original
technically, you
story.
think about season 2 of Mandalorian gave us the best version of Luke after episode 6.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Before episode 7 and 8, which is very controversial and very
It was like him and his
discussion
prime.
wise, like prime Luke, where you're just like, well, that doesn't make sense anymore because why would he do what he did in 8? And that opens up a whole new
Yeah.
window, which is great. That's why it's great to talk about sequels because then it just opens a whole new door they could just go through and talk
but by
about stuff.
definition, like I mean, we talked about Webster's dictionary definition before about sequels, and it's a continuation of the story.
Yeah.
Is a prequel not
continuation.
a continuation,
Yeah.
or is it technically the beginning?
I feel like it could be also, it could add to the continuation of the story of like Godfather.
yeah.
His dad's story continues with Michael.
Mm-hmm.
It passes on.
Yeah.
You could do that with Star Wars. You could do it with a lot of stuff. Like there's some, but there are some that don't fit. Hangover is one of them. Hangover is one of those films where
Yeah.
it's like you could have done multiple movies with different actors getting drunk in Vegas.
Yeah.
Instead, you're going to Bangkok with the same actors, or you're doing a separate third one that has nothing to do with getting a bachelor
Leslie
party.
Chow.
You've missed the complete point of the first one. You completely surpassed it. Now you're in a different realm, and it's not even. It doesn't continue the story. You're just doing it just to do it.
Yeah.
So like that's my biggest fear for like Joker 2. Are we going to stay in the same format of like Joaquin going down the path to being crazy, or are we just going to fucking just do the movie to do it?
I think they're just gonna.
And that's the different discussion too with sequels. Like,
And I
is
agree
it
with
just
you, too.
based off a story, or is it based off like how much money can we make off of it?
Yeah, and I honestly don't agree that they should have done a Joker 2. I
Should've
think
been
that
one
should have
off.
been a standalone.
Should have been a
film.
one-off.
I think it was perfect.
And
as
we'll
it
talk
was.
about that too. There's certain movies that deserve just one film.
Yeah.
Taxi Driver's one of them,
Yeah.
and we're gonna get a second one. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
Why do we need 2 Taxi Drivers?
I mean,
one off.
I'm really excited though to talk about movies like Deuce Bigelow.
The European Gigolo.
I honestly think that's a great movie. That's a
Oh.
hot take for me.
I
I love
actually
European
love-
Gigolo.
Can I just
Deuce
state,
Bigelow.
Can I
I
just
think it's
state
great.
too? I was
I
thinking
did too.
when I was thinking about it, and I was going through like what is my best, what am I worst? Like I just remember I was talking to Ryan about like it's a more recent film, but like 21 Jump Street, and they did 22 Jump Street, and the ending credits where they just like go through, and it's like basically the ending credits is just them two in different formats of sequels, and like personally. I would just love if we could do that. So like just the 4 of us, like as a hangover, and Joseph's just like on a roof somewhere. I just think that would be funny. But anyways.
But
so,
like Jump Street too. Like if they would have done 23 Jump Street with Men in Black,
Oh yeah, that would have been a sick tie.
yeah, I
stuff
mean,
like that. I'm
Just
like,
so much more
just
interesting.
add value to the story. That's my
Yeah.
biggest thing with sequels.
Yeah.
Just
Well, I think
add
it's just like
something to
it's a continuation to the original story,
Yes.
and I think that's
Don't
just like
devalue
it's,
their story
Yeah.
just for the
Yeah.
sake of a
A
couple
cash
extra
grab.
bucks.
Yeah,
and
I think that's what
that's what
everything-
ruins it. That's what like, and we'll get to it because I'm sure we'll talk about the
Yeah,
next
we're gonna
Joker
talk about-
movie. It's gonna ruin the first one. I just that's my feeling because like it's just Todd Phillips has already done this mistake with Hangover 2.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, yo, man, one-offs are great.
He's just gonna try
There's
and like.
some movies that just need just one story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need to fucking open the door or the universe. I get why the studio wants to do it, but you don't need to do it. And we're gonna get into all those movies that have done it or haven't done it. We'll get into it. That's
So
the
are we
beauty of this
technically
podcast.
going to talk about Hamlet too?
No, unfortunately, I would love to, but probably not because it's not a sequel.
I mean, it's a 2, but
I mean, it is. Yeah.
Just because they had the number
We
2
talk
doesn't
about
make it a
Scarface
sequel.
2 in the video game.
Video.
Heat 2 when it
When
happens.
he survived. Oh yeah, Heat 2 is another one.
I would like
Yeah.
to add to your original point.
Heat
I
2 is a
think-
book though, and I'm still trying to read it, and it's still not great.
I'm gonna kill you. I think it depends. Like every movie franchise does prequels, sequels differently. Like you have the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where there's 50 million films at this point, where there's prequels, sequels, spin-offs,
Yeah.
but they all somehow connect in their own way. Where now they're spinning off into the new
Yeah,
era of
unfortunately.
like the cinematic universe for
Yeah.
Marvel. But I think every movie franchise does it differently. Where I think, to me, like one of my favorite Star Wars films, I really loved Rogue One. It is my favorite Star Wars film.
And
Though a lot of people
Rogue
don't
One
like
is
it,
one of those that we will
and
talk
a lot
about
of people
'cause
love it. To me, it made me understand the stories of Star Wars a lot better. I think it answered a lot of questions that I had that I didn't necessarily have the answers to. That and I also love Diego Luna, but you know that's a
love
different
Diego
story.
Diego Luna.
We love Diego Luna.
We do
And,
love
and
him.
Rogue
Love
One
Diego
is going to be very much an example of like where does that fit in the franchise storyline? Because if you could, technically, it is a sequel to
It is a sequel to the third one.
New Hope.
But also a prequel
It
to
ends
the fourth one, right?
right
I
where
feel
New
like-
Yeah, it's a
Hope-
prequel to
I
It
feel
ends
like
where New Hope starts
I
off.
feel like Star Wars is gonna be like a big month for us, where
Yeah.
we're just it's gonna be
gonna be
like
more than a
such a
month.
show.
that timeline.
yeah,
is
the
just here and
timeline.
there,
We'll
yeah.
post a timeline
Yeah.
of just everything.
And we're
but, like,
talking. It's not just movies either. We're talking about animated series.
It's gonna be a mess.
There's so much stuff
It's
with
gonna
that.
be a mess.
And there's a lot of series like that too. You can go like Terminator's coming out with an animated anime series that
Yeah,
takes
you can do
place
that.
It
after.
is.
Yeah, it's a
Yes.
Netflix series.
And that's gonna do the same thing as Star Wars, where it's like you have to just pinpoint.
I don't know
Yeah.
about that.
But that's the beauty of sequels. I think that's what makes me a big fan of sequels, where like you don't know where it's gonna go. You hope for a sequel it finishes the story, but unfortunately with franchises or just movies that make a lot of money, they just milk it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why I wanted to talk about best and worst, because there are certain. I feel like sequels get a bad rap, which is why I wanted to kind of bring this up and do a podcast about it, because sequels technically get a bad rap for being worst, right? They're not always going to be a better continuation, in fact, of the original storyline, the original plot. So I kind of wanted to talk about, like what we would think is the best, and then obviously we can talk about all the other nonsense that isn't, a great continuation. So as the progress, we're going to talk about best, we're going to talk about worst, we're going to obviously have different thoughts about it.
All of it.
So I mean, we just wanted to give a general introduction into what we're about, what we're doing. We're definitely looking forward to talking about a bunch of different films. I think, since we kind of mentioned towards the end, there's a bunch of different movies that go into different timelines, whether they're more origin favor or prequel, sequel, continuation, everything like that. So, with this, we are kind of starting off a little fresh in the summer and doing kind of more so a film that kind of does fit into that. Where are we in terms of the overall storyline, overall plot, which is Aliens.
Yeah, and that door is never going to close because we have a new Aliens movie coming out in the next few weeks, and we're going to talk about all the Alien franchise movies. And we will let you guys all know. The subscribe button is down below. We'll have a bunch of stuff down below as well. Check that out if you want to. If you guys are going to definitely dive into the Alien movies because, like as you said, the door never closes for sequels, especially if they're successful.
Yeah.
We're going to be there. We're going to fucking talk about it.
Yeah. As long as movies keep going, we'll be there to talk about them.
Woohoo!
Thank you so much for watching. Please hit subscribe. We'll see you guys next time, and we'll continue on.
Deuces.
Bye.
I have to pee.
Thanks for listening. Until next time, the podcast, a show so sublime. Marissa, Mooney, Joseph, and Ryan signing off with glee. Join us next episode for more sequel revelry.